Vic records all of Bashir's favorite hits for him. McGreevy was a jerk and a know-it-all, but he tied a mean bandage. And Captain Sisko tells Ensign Nog to keep his ears open. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we are doing a review of Deep Space Nine Season 7, Episode 8, The Siege of AR-558, written by Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler, directed by Weinrich Colby. This was November 18th, 1998. It is a Nog episode, so Malissa Longo is here.
With Mochi.
We are also thrilled, grateful, and super excited to have writer, producer, showrunner, superstar Ira Steven Behr with us today.
Hello, hello.
Man, this is exciting. So good to see you again, Ira.
Good to see all of you. Good to be back.
Yeah.
The seventh season. The seventh season. I started to feel the same kind of flutter in my belly that I had, back in the day with the seventh season of the actual show. Things coming to an end, all good things. Nothing is forever. What you leave behind. And then I got into the feeling of, I should have done more of these things. I should have done more of these things. Why did I do more episodes? There were more things I wanted to say. But then I sat down and watched the episode and said to myself, it's probably better that I don't put myself through this all that often. This little trip down memory lane, it's good in small doses.
You actually really articulate the way I feel watching the seventh season, because there's like a certain sadness in the background of my head, like, oh, it's coming to an end. It's coming to an end. I just keep reminding myself of that, and I think it makes me watch the episode slower, and like it's like I try to take my time. It's like when you have some good food and you savor bites instead of just scarfing it all down. You try to take your time and eat each bite and savor the flavor. That's how I feel like now watching these episodes. And thankfully, you're giving us a lot of flavor to savor.
Thanks. Well, I think when we do the final episode, I think even though I don't advise this for the kids listening at home, I think there might need to be some cocktails and stuff that final episode to discuss all that needs to be discussed about that. But that, let's not rush that.
Ira, you kind of mentioned, sorry, I was just going to say, you mentioned your feelings about season 7 and the butterflies. Just as a fan, I can only imagine, because when we get to this part, for me, I'm a mess already. I was a mess starting in the 3rd season, knowing that eventually this is going to end. Already I was stressing about it. But for you, when you guys were back there in 98 and 99, what was the prevalent feeling? Was it excitement, nervousness, sadness? What was relief?
Well, and I hate to say it, I think you're going to, the answer, because it's been used as the answer for so many other questions. I'm sure it's like 26 episodes. You don't have time to think of anything except for the 26 episodes you have to get done. So there was no real time for nostalgia. There was no time for let's sit back and really take in what's happening. Also at that point, I was the only person there who had been, in the writing staff, who'd been there for all 7 seasons. So, so there was a kind of different vibe that I was going through, I think, if I had allowed myself to go through it. I'm not saying that 5 years isn't a long time to be on a TV show, but to have been there from the very beginning, casting that whole thing, luckily I had the Dominion War to keep myself occupied. And how many, I was thinking, well, how many episodes, we were going to get out of this horse trading with Rick about how much serialization we could do, and things like that kept me from thinking about the bigger picture. So it was just another season, really. There were episodes we wanted to do because we knew we didn't have another season to do them in, but there was no sense of this is the end. It's like it's just another 26 episodes we have to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to my question, which is how much of this season is tying up storylines that you want to tie up and get basically ending, and how much of it is like, oh well, we're creating new storylines? Because I feel like there's kind of a balance there with the whole introduction of Ezri, and even with this episode, I feel like it's almost a tie up of the Nog Quark relationship, where it feels like this is almost like Quark is seeing Nog now, having resisted his whole participation, and this is kind of the tie off of all of that, the climax of it. But how much of it is the balance there?
Well, that's a really good question. I think Ezri, really made us present in the new. So it wasn't all about nostalgia and just we have to tie things up. Ezri was like, we had to validate Ezri, whether the fans, again, I've had this discussion with you guys before, it's not so much with the fans, but with ourselves. We had to feel that we were, at ease and confident with the decision to bring on another Trill. And so a lot of the season, especially the first half of the season, it's a really good question because it really divides the season up. I never thought about this. But the first half of the season a lot of it was about Ezri and just making, not that there weren't other great storylines and things we were doing and giving characters good stuff to do, but definitely Ezri was, we have a limited amount of time, let's get this character to pop. And then the second half of the season was, let's make this whole Dominion storyline that's been going on since season 2. Let's really, finish that in a big way, try to say things about the franchise that hasn't quite been said before, at least in the same way, of which this episode we're going to talk about is a big part of that. And then tie things up, but at the same time, knowing that there was not going to be a movie, that this was the end. We didn't want to tie it up in a neat bow. We didn't want to make it like the audience knew what was going to be the future for every one of these characters. Right. So everyone was going off and doing their own thing. So there was a lot going on. I forgot about how much the first half of the season was consumed. And I know fans at the time were like, is it too much Ezri, blah, 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 blah. But who cares? We just, they made us, found ourselves in this situation where we lost Terry Farrell, which was like, okay, why the hell did that have to happen? But okay, it's done. And now what do we do about it? What do we do about it? And so it's funny, Sorak, that you bring it up, because when I watched this episode, one of the things I liked about the episode was, without hitting it too hard, I thought that Ezri and her relationship with Kellen, with Bill Mumy, even though there's not a lot of screen time, I thought it was well handled. And at that point in the season, we could have Ezri just there doing her thing. We didn't have to focus on it as much. It certainly wasn't an Ezri show in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, interesting.
And I think that in some way, because as I'm watching the first up until now these episodes, Ezri feels like the reintroduction to the characters. So it's like when she pops in, she's in Sisko's kitchen. She's, boom. She's not even on the station first. She's like in the Sisko's personal space, right? And so like you're like, okay, what is this girl doing here? And she endears herself. Then we get the awkwardness with her and Worf kind of later on, where Worf is like, hey, stay away from me. I don't know how to deal with this. And I really feel like I'm getting a reintroduction to the characters. You get Quark kind of revealing, hey, just be yourself, and you don't have to hold on to a lot of those things in the past. There's a lot of reintroduction of the old characters through the new character, which I think you guys did a very good job of kind of blending that in together as well.
You know, I have to say something else now, you know, and consider this a season 7 kind of discussion. Just listening to you talk, Sorak, and I've told you how impressed I was when I interviewed you for the documentary and stuff, but I see such a difference just in these last few minutes talking to you as when this show, The Seventh Rule, began. Because when it began, I was thinking, boy, Sorak is like, he's really learning this as he's going. The show, I mean, you were a kid, right? And you weren't in a lot of episodes and a lot of scenes, and you weren't watching the show like a fan. Why would you? So you are discovering this show. And I remember thinking at the beginning, it's like, you know, Sorak needs to do some homework, man. Sorok's got to catch up to this thing. But what that homework was, clearly now it's coming to me, was watching the goddamn show and doing the show. And now I'm hearing you talk, and this is the Sorak I know. You know, the guy, the intelligent man who can now articulate his place, his feelings about Deep Space Nine. You know, you've learned the show. So congratulations. You know, no, I mean it. It's like it's an interesting thing to watch. It's another growth thing. And I know you're not a kid. I know, you know, I don't mean growth in that sense, but it's definitely you coming to an understanding of an important part of your life that you were too young to understand at the time. And it's nice.
Yeah, and I've grown so comfortable and familiar with these characters because they're so well fleshed out. And I know the people personally, so it makes it easier to get to know the characters. And as I've seen what you guys have written, these episodes are so poignant because they're just dealing with subject matter that relates to all of us. Just doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. At some point, you care about your nephew or your son. I think you had a great line in this episode where Quark tells Sisko, "You wouldn't send Jake," and it was just like a real like zinger. Like it hurt me. I was like, "Whoa, yeah." Would I send my kid? I don't know. It was kind of a big deal the way he said it. And I love the familiarity with the characters that Quark felt close enough to even say that to him. You know, like. I think it's just so personal for me. And as I'm watching these episodes, I really love the way these friendships and the dynamics of you always go the other way when I expect you to go one way. For example, when you had the bandage scene, I expected you to write something like, "Yeah, that was my buddy. I love the guy. He was an awesome man." You went the exact opposite. I hated that guy. He couldn't stop talking.
It's more real.
The way you did that. Yes.
Yeah, we can talk about that scene because when we get to actually talking about the episode. But I just want to say one last thing, and then we could let this slide. But of course, the show is so much. The series is so much about, like you said, relationships and friendship.
Yeah.
You know, Sorak, I wouldn't say you owe him, but I really hope you appreciate what Ryan has done for you by
absolutely.
You know, Ryan. Excuse me for talking for you, Ryan, and if I'm wrong, just say. I mean, Ryan is.
I won't tell you if you're wrong, regardless.
Ryan is a fan of the show, right? Yeah. Ryan is a fan, and he's doing this out of his love of his show, but. What this has offered you, giving you a chance. I mean, you owe this guy and Malissa, and obviously Aron. If he was, this would be a whole different discussion if Aron was here, I'm sure. So this is something you should never forget as you go up to other things, or you're doing season 7 of Strange New Worlds, and this is all in the distant past. But this is something you should never forget, and this should be something between you guys that's very special, you know.
I love Ryan dearly. I love Aron dearly for, just coming up with this concept and having the vision and the foresight to see this day. He knew that there would be value in watching this kind of maturation of the understanding of the show. And Melissa has been so awesome. And yeah, Ryan, you've been amazing. And I guess I don't thank you publicly enough, but you make this possible. You're the IRA bear of this podcast. So
well,
I thank you for well, you are, and I thank you.
I'll be the David Livingston.
You're the man, and I thank you all for allowing me to have this journey, learn about the show, because I'm really. I felt like I didn't know anything about these people. Now, in hindsight, I didn't really know much about the show. I knew about the people on the show and my personal relationships with the people, and certainly the episodes that I did and what I did in those episodes. But really, what everybody else was doing on the show, to know their plot lines and their storylines, and to get to see their performances. And their growth as well. I'm not the only one that grew. I think Terry Farrell grew on the show, and Sadiq grew on the show. Aron grew on the show.
Totally.
Renee didn't grow much because he was already there. He already was a master of his trade. But a lot of us grew by being around such experts like Avery Brooks and Renee and you, Ira. So. It's been a really amazing journey, but that's part of the sadness now as I'm watching these episodes, because I'm thinking, man, I want some more of this DS9 stuff.
Now you get it, man.
Now
he's one of us now.
Ira,
I just wanted to echo what you were saying. And by the way, thank you so much for the kind words. Melissa and Sorak and I are on like this crazy journey, and it feels so important and powerful and good. And like I said, by the third season, I was already sad knowing that at some point it's going to be over. But we've watched Cirroc first coming on as the actor, looking back on the show, and Jake Sisko and Cirroc, the actor, looking back. And now by the seventh season, not only then by like the third or fourth season, he also became Cirroc Lofton, the Deep Space Nine fan. Like he's like, I'm actually a fan of Nana, the actress. He became a fan, but now he's turning into Cirroc Lofton, the Deep Space Nine expert. Like he's noticing these things and finding these things and remembering these things that I don't remember, and I've seen it a bunch of times. I'm like, holy shit, how did he catch that? So like he's become like the Deep Space Nine expert. And it's so cool to watch. And Melissa and I just like watch him every single week, and becoming this expert, I guess. But anyway, it's been an amazing growth and a wild ride. And yeah, Sorak and I do absolutely exchange our fondness for each other, maybe more so privately than publicly, but there's nobody in the quadrant I'd rather be working with than Sorak. He's like A+ aces through and through. Anyway, we'll kiss each other's butts a little bit more later. But Melissa, I know you have a lot to say as well, because you're wearing one of the best shirts of all time, the Captain Nog Forever shirt. And Nog had such a great and prominent and important role in this episode.
Well, first I want to say that going into this show, Aron knew how great the show was, but he hadn't watched it. He hadn't sat down and watched it. He probably watched it more than Sorak had. But he knew that there was good stuff in this show, and he really was excited to explore it. And what he was even more excited about was to see Sorok's reaction to seeing the show for the first time. And it would have been amazing to see Aron watching Sorok's growth through these 7 seasons, because I know I've seen it. And from the first episode to where we are now, and going back to listening to the earlier episodes, it's your growth has been wonderful to watch, and I'm grateful that I've been able to see it. Because your insights on things and the things that you catch aren't always what everybody else would catch or bring to the table, and it's wonderful to see that. So, and yeah, Aron would be excited to be a part of this right now, but so. Yeah.
Well, let's get into this episode because Ira, you and Hans really just hit this out of the park. I feel like so many great moments, but the centerpiece of which is this experience about Nog. I think we really get inside Nog's head in this episode. He says, he wants to earn his respect, and I feel like that's been his overarching mantra for his character. At some point when it triggered, he was like, I need to earn my respect. And he really reveals that in the scene with Quark in this episode. Where does that originate for you guys story-wise, like for his character and the journey he's going to take in this episode?
Well, as I felt since season 2, the end of season 2, I always felt a certain feeling of not so much guilt, but an unease with the way violence was portrayed in Star Trek and these space battles. Even back in the day when they had, I forget what it was called, before they had, tweets and chat, where people, the message boards, right?
Message boards, yeah.
It used to just drive me insane how much it was fanboys just riffing on spaceships blowing up and battles and stuff like that. And all I could think was the amount of people on those ships who were being killed. And no one cared. No one ever thought about that, it seems. And part of the reason to do the Dominion War originally was to just, as with everything on DS9 that I wanted to do, was just to question the Federation, not put it down, not necessarily rip it a new a-hole, but just go, what does it all mean? How do they react to threats and violence? A lot of the stuff that Quark talks about in this episode. So we try to do it a little bit with To the Death, which kind of worked okay, but it didn't hit home enough. And so this was the chance, this was the episode where I really wanted to make the audience uncomfortable, or at least open their minds to what they've been watching as entertainment and make them maybe think about it and how they feel about it. So obviously Nog has a big role in this. I mean, so do a lot of other things in this episode, a lot of other elements. But it seemed like right off the bat, I wanted Nog to be a victim of this battle, this fight, this hand-to-hand combat, this not killing people from afar, but having to deal with combat and violence face to face, and the toll it takes on people. I mean, to me, the most chilling moment, and I meant it at the time, but I was amazed, having not seen it all these years, when Nog says, "I feel sorry for the Jem'Hadar," after Quark makes this great speech and does all he can to explain to his nephew, not to get caught up, not to become another, another person of violence as the answer to things. I mean, that line, I feel sorry for the Jemadar. I mean, Nog is lost in that moment in a way, you know. Who knows where that would have gone if he hadn't gotten injured. So, I mean, Nog was just the perfect way to experience what this show is about, or at least as the core of it. So I think that worked extremely well. I was very happy with that. And, you know, to me, when I think about this episode, what I think about the most is one of the battles I had with Rick that I lost, which was, you know, we want to blow up. We wanted
Berman
to
or Colby?
Rick.
I mean, in this episode, I'm not, you know, I don't know for sure.
I wanted to blow off both of Nog's legs.
Right.
Because we knew that he was going to get his leg back, right? I mean, it's the 24th century. There was never an issue that we weren't going to have a hobbling, one-legged Nog. You know, we were not going to have, that wasn't part of the equation. We all knew that. So what was the thing that would make the audience most uncomfortable within the moment? What would be the thing that they would most, you know, cringe? What's the most cringe-worthy thing we could give him? And the thought of losing seemingly half your body, you know, seemed really disturbing and really scary. And it made Rick uncomfortable. And you know, and it was like, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Yes, it's not fun, and it's not, and it's icky. It's this and it's that. I could not move him off that dime, you know, and it's still, you know, I just think it could have even been more powerful. I know you can say, well, one leg, two leg doesn't matter. And maybe on a certain level it doesn't, but I think it would have, for a Star Trek episode in 1998, that would have been like really like, what the hell are we watching? And that's what I wanted. But you know, and that's when we knew we were going to do another episode. I mean, that, you know, we were going to do It's Only a Paper Moon, because this could not be like O'Brien, who gets 30 years of whatever in prison, and then we never talk about it again, which is our bad. No, we couldn't just let this go. This had to be serious. We had to see the response, and who better than Nog, you know? And the fact is he doesn't leave Starfleet, does he? He doesn't become, you know, a pure Ferengi. He's lost to the Ferengi. In that moment, he says, "I feel sorry for the Jemadar." I really feel he's lost to the Ferengi, for good or ill.
I wrote down that Nog loses his rose-colored glasses when he's looking towards, you know, this war between the Dominion. I feel like up to this point, he has kind of romanticized the soldiers that he looks up to, and then the realization of this isn't a game, and, you know, and I feel like there's a lot of growing up for people who may not have had as much combat experience as some of the other characters on the show, and I was wondering, was that a conscious choice, or did it just happen to go that direction, the story?
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Well, like Nog doesn't have as much experience as, say, Kira in a battlefield, or Quark doesn't have battle experience, or Ezri, or even Bashir.
Well, that's why we put them in. That's why we didn't have O'Brien and Worf in the show. We didn't want to have the combat vets. We wanted Sisko, without a doubt. But we wanted those people who had a more visceral reaction, who haven't been hardened as much. And also because you have guys like Vargas and Reese, and those people who are so, in the moment and in survival mode, that we needed to see the difference. So Nog was just at the top of the pyramid, where Bashir and Esri were the other sides of the pyramid, the base of the pyramid. But yes, they're all going through what is, even though, yes, Bashir has been in battle before, and the other Trill symbionts have been in battle before, but for Esri, it was, trying to give the audience enough surrogates so they could put themselves in their place.
So, sorry, we just got to run to our break real quick.
Okay, yeah, I
very quickly.
Now.
But really good point, Malissa. I thought about the rose-colored glasses. I also submit that Quark lost his rose-colored glasses as well. He was forced to because of that situation in a lot of ways. But let's take a super quick break. Ira disagrees with me. He tilted his head. He's like, did he? I don't know.
I don't know.
As his view of Nog, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll take a super quick break, and we'll be right back on the seventh rule.